Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Emorja, and we are back for one more episode of Black and Indie, and we're going to be highlighting some of Notre Dame's finest Black domers in entertainment. So, before I go any further, I want to make sure that I introduce my co-host, Lynnette. How are you doing?
Good. I'm excited to talk to you guys. Maybe I'm FTT, so if anybody wants to throw me an entertainment job during this, let me know. But very excited to speak with you guys.
James, how you doing, man?
Oh, Emorja, I'm doing great. So glad to be here. So glad to see some more Black domers here on my screen. My meetings don't look like this, but I'm so glad they look like it now.
And you know, the thing is, so I went to the gym earlier today and I did some ab work, but Owen's only been here for like 5 minutes and I'm already feeling some burn. So I'm pretty APEC after this.
Humble brag. That's what's up.
I know. Oh, dude, remember ab work? Oh, man.
Yeah, remember the ab work?
Oh, just young and in shape. Look at you, man. Fantastic.
So, Christine, I'm going to ask you first. How would you describe your time at Notre Dame?
Well, it was very Midwestern. Now, having lived in LA for a long time, it definitely had a very provincial feel. And our community as Black people was even more provincial and smaller and intimate and, rewarding and helpful in that sense. But then you get out into the real world and you realize, like, wow, we went to school in a bubble. But and I think that's good and bad. But from my point of view, all good. Especially in light of the fact that I was able to spend my time there with my current husband, Michael Swanson, in the grad of '93. So my time was good there because of that guy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And, I can say to everybody who's listening that Christine and her husband, Michael, are very personable people. Like, you see people who are, high, like in regards to hierarchy with entertainment, but they're just so touchable, and I loved it, that time we had together. Jubba, what about you, man? So before you say that, I was checking out your bio, and it mentioned something about College Hill, and I used to love watching College Hill when I was in high school. But how has it been for you? How was your time in Notre Dame when you were here, man?
Mine was complicated. I kind of got duped into coming because I was actually going to Penn State. Had a dorm mate and I was going. Yeah. And the coach of the fencing team was like, if you come here, I'll get you a scholarship after freshman year. Because I was recruited to Notre Dame for fencing as well as for Penn State. I mean, every place I was going to go, I was recruited for fencing. So when I got there, my man reneged on the deal. So I didn't start, by the end of freshman year, going into sophomore year, I ran into some issues, and they were racial issues. The kids that wind up getting the scholarship happened to be white from Australia. And I had more trophies in my cabinet than they did. As a matter of fact, I won the national title my sophomore year and still didn't get it. So I had a lot of reasons to be angry about it. And I carried that with me a little bit throughout my experience there. But what I will say about, in general, my experience was a good one because the education and the lifelong friendships that were developed there that can't ever be replaced. I don't know what would have happened had I gone into Penn State. I'm sure I would have got some friends and had a good experience, but I can only base it on my real true life. And the education that I received, the friendships that were developed who are still friends today, that can't be replaced and that can't be you can't gloss over that fact. So with some of the issues that I had being at the university in the race space, I think my relationships with my friendships, the education, the actual cachet of having Notre Dame behind your name when I was looking for work out of school, it carried a whole lot of weight. Even for people that hated Notre Dame, there was a respect there. So if I was interviewing with somebody who went to USC, we hate you guys. You're hired. It was like that. In every interview in my 20s, they brought up my university and they brought up that I had been an intern at David Letterman. Those are the two biggest things in my young career looking for work. And so I know the weight that going to Notre Dame carried for me after school. And that is something that I always appreciate.
I can say, because I have my being situation, I don't know how that feels, but I can say I do know how it feels to be overlooked, especially when you're more qualified for something and you have the credentials, you have the resume, but yet people still overlook you because of the color of your skin. I hate that happened to you, but I can say that I'm glad that you came out of that as a better man.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Man, so I appreciate you.
Can you, Jubba, can you dive into that a little bit more? Just unpeel the onion, as they say. So you come to Notre Dame, just probably a handful of African-American students here, and then you enter into fencing, which is probably more of the smaller part of the funnel. What was that experience like for you? How did you get along? Did you get funny looks, all that good stuff?
Oh, but I've been dealing with that since high school, because I even got into fencing because I was trying to go play basketball, and I failed the physical because I had a big growth spurt between 8th and 9th grade. So I was so excited to get to the 9th grade to go play ball for a high school basketball team. And then the doctor told me, I was devastated because I just wanted to play sports. I could play them all, but basketball was what I wanted to do. And he was like, "Why don't you try fencing?" I was like, "Fencing?" And I went to a demonstration in high school, and I was like, "Yo, this shit is interesting and weird." And I went out and I got good really fast. I won the freshman state title. Sophomore, I won the title every year I was there, and got really good really fast, and that's how I got recruited. So when I got to Notre Dame, I was already used to living in the white world. My father used to say, "I don't know whose son you are, but everything I was interested in was white sports for some reason." Because I never liked to be told no. Yeah. Because even in high school, I wanted to be in that world because it was mysterious to me. That world being this wealthy white world. So why was I interested in skiing coming from the inner city of Newark? Why was I interested in fencing? Why was I interested in water sports, as my friend calls it, white fun? So that was all the stuff that I was interested in. And my father's, he's like, "Why can't you, be like in the basketball? Why everything you do costs so much money?" And I'm a kid from the hood. Like, we don't got no money for fencing. You know how much fencing gear costs? So in the course of those 4 years at high school, I got to live in that world. And so by the time I got to Notre Dame, and because I was good at it, there's a certain swag that comes along with that. Even if the black kids looked at me a little weird, like, "You're a fencer? That's not a real sport. That's a gay sport." All the stereotypes that go along with that, right? And you had to deal with that. But I always attribute my parenting to that. So that stuff never bothered me. Being teased for my name, being teased for what I did, that stuff really never really bothered me. But so by the time, what bothered me was when the coach reneged on that deal, because I had a scholarship to Penn State, had a full scholarship to Rutgers. So I didn't have to have a bill coming out of college, but I did. And I wound up getting partial. But at the end of the day, it was very painful to watch white kids who weren't as accomplished as I was get the scholarship. Mm-hmm. And so it turned into a big thing. And then I won the silver medal my junior year. And I quit my senior year because I was done with it. I was like, I was not going to be abused by the system. I was not going to let him, the coach at the time, God rest his soul, because he did bring me there. If it was not for him, it's like bittersweet, right? If it wasn't for him, I would have never gotten to Notre Dame. But I definitely got the shaft. So in the midst of fighting that battle and arguing, I put it in the newspaper, in the school, in the Observer. I wrote a whole article about what happened to me. They went and got an attorney, a grown ass man, to write a rebuttal in the paper full of lies that I was trying to get out of practice because of my injuries. It was a whole thing, man. And so there was definitely a bad taste left in my mouth because of that. But in the end, I became stronger for it. I got to actually go on my first spring break senior year because I'd never done that. But I did regret not fencing my senior year. I shouldn't say I regret it. I missed it. I missed not fencing that senior year. But because of the kind of sport it is, I was able to continue to do it after school. But it was painful for a young man who at the time was 19, 20 years old, having to go through that without having a mentor at that time to help me navigate it. Because, especially at Notre Dame, you had your student advisor, but they weren't, that wasn't something that was going to be handled through that. So I wish there was, with this happening right now, there was somebody who was on our list that we could call that had gone through it. The Alumni Association felt really new for the black students. You know what I mean? So it would have been great to have somebody guide me through that, or talk on my behalf to my adult coach, grown ass man coach, to the athletic director, And I can talk on and on about this, but that to peel back the onion a little bit, it's definitely much more layers to it. But
I hear you.
I don't want to take up all the time.
Well, no, I mean, this is obviously is therapy. It's therapy for you, it's therapy for us. So we're glad you are able to share that story with your Notre Dame family. Thank you for
absolutely
speaking on that.
I really appreciate that. And Owen, how about you, man? How was your time at Notre Dame?
My time at Notre Dame was No, I'm playing. I'm here. I was just watching this thing on Vice about emotional emancipation groups that meet where Black folks can get together and talk about traumas that we have suffered that that we don't have to explain ourselves. This feels like that. This is cathartic. I didn't even know that about Jubba. That was really. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, I didn't either because some parts weren't in the book.
I didn't.
Yeah, man. For me, Notre Dame I was born in the Bahamas, but I was raised in Maryland, in Prince George's County, Maryland. So I didn't really know I was a minority until I went to Notre Dame. Like, I mean, I knew conceptually, but that's not what I grew up seeing. I always saw more Black people than white people. Prince George's County, Maryland. When I moved there, it used to be all white, I guess, a decade before we moved there, but then white flight happened. So all the whites who were still there just couldn't afford to leave. So they were our teachers. They were kind of mean to us. But when I went to Notre Dame, that was the first time I experienced being a minority. But what was weird, it was also the first time every Black student I met, I was like, oh man, like I'm on a campus full of code switchers like me. Like all of us knew just how to be different people to, survive. And all of us have this like this engine to not let obstacles really stop us from our goal. And it's like that lightness that you can you see. And that was one of the things that I assumed. I never experienced that because my mom. One of the things that I learned about having children now is that you try to prepare your kids for a world that you don't know what it's going to be like. Like, we're guessing. I don't know what the world's going to be like when my son is 21. So my mom had me. My father wanted to name me an African name, and my mom was like, he's not going to get a job with that name. I understand it, but no. So So they fought, and I was named this for the first 6 weeks of my life. And then my mom won with Owen, and that's a Welsh name. And but she was preparing me to be an employee. But as irony has it, like I'm a terrible employee. I don't like for you. So I have to be in charge, but nobody ever told me that you could dream to be in charge. So it took me a little bit longer to figure that out. And so, I'm coming to you guys, like I shared this with Jubba, but I just got a job. I am the new showrunner of The Last OG, season 4.
Nice.
That means I'm in charge.
Nice.
I just closed on Friday. So but it took a long journey of applying so many lessons I learned in Notre Dame, because it is kind of like everyone you talk to, and I know Christine can speak to this and Jubba can speak to this, everyone that we talk to that we want to get our ideas out, for the most part, they don't look like us. You have to convince them. So being in the Notre Dame environment, helped make me not fear people who don't look like me and become a lesser version of myself. So, I mean, it was all these lessons, but it also being around so many white folks who had different, I would say advantages or what have you, and seeing that I was just as good as they were, better in some respects. I won bookstore. Shout out. Nobody else. I had to win the shot.
Had to go there.
I had to win the shot in my bookstore my senior year. It's the only places that matters.
But I want to speak to a little bit about what Notre Dame offered that I did not expect. And really Notre Dame was the catalyst for my entree into the work that I do now as a filmmaker. So first, starting off with, I had 2 Black professors there. Now, I don't know if you guys remember Dr. Marcia Sawyer and Dr. Erskine Peters.
Oh, yeah.
So in taking their classes, this was the first time I was exposed to discourse about images of Black people. And to have that kind of discourse at an all-white university really stood out to me in a precious way that woke me up and opened my eyes to how we are viewed as people or as a commodity or in terms of our imagery. So a lot of that foundation was laid there. And then secondly, my freshman year, I was majoring in finance and Japanese. Remember that, Owen? Owen studied Japanese too.
Yeah, and I did.
And so I was just going to be like, oh, maybe I can get a job as a finance major. And that was my only goal. Well, Notre Dame to me, like one of the more memorable and admirable things about it is that it really extended itself in terms of the arts. So it was really good about bringing people to the campus. And in my freshman year, Spike Lee came to campus, talk about Do the Right Thing. And up until that point, I was probably going to be an accountant. And then when I saw Spike Lee, and I was like, well, will people make movies for a living and they get paid to do it? I immediately changed my major to film and television, and then started to study about Spike Lee and understood that he went to NYU. I decided in my freshman year at Notre Dame that I was going to go to NYU because that's what Spike Lee did. And I ended up going to NYU, and Spike Lee ended up being my directing teacher.
Beautiful.
But the exposure that we got as students through the education and the accessibility to the arts that I would not have been privy to was very foundational in terms of me becoming a filmmaker. And so for that, I thank Notre Dame, but I do believe that there's value in that education because of that kind of exposure early on. I'm not sure that I would have been privy to. Who knows? I could have somewhere else, but it happened to happen at Notre Dame through those Black professors and through Spike Lee.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I was pre-med until I returned to film and television. I was pre-med for 2 years. It's not as romantic of a story, but I was getting some C's for the first time in my life, and I was like, I'm not going to be a good doctor. Let me go back to this.
Hold on,
yes,
Christine.
that is exactly what happened to me.
Christine, you only told me to study Japanese. You never told me you switched, because I stayed.
I
have a finance degree. I'm sitting here. I mean, I was in a play, and I did a play at school and took acting class, but I never switched my major. Christine, you should tell me.
My bad.
Oops. That's so funny because I have the exact same experience. I was getting C's and D's my sophomore year as a business kid, and then I was like, why am I doing this when I want to go in entertainment, and switched to FTT right away. And I think that something that's unique about Notre Dame is you can make that switch and not be totally afraid that it's not going to go to fruition, which is, I think, a major advantage. But it also leads me to the question, like, Christine, you touched on this also. What was your guys' experience with the arts and entertainment, either in Notre Dame or because of Notre Dame? And Christine, you talked about this already, but just because, I mean, going in entertainment is not a popular thing. It's not something that you are it's not usually encouraged. It's not like the finance, the pre-med, all those kind of things. And can you kind of talk about that, and in relation with your Black identity, how maybe your peers saw it, or and Jubba, you talked about this a little bit, how your parents saw some of the unpopular decisions you're making on top of and on how that adds to being Black too, especially in Notre Dame.
Yeah, I mean, I had been set out to be a doctor since I was probably 10 years old. I mean, that's all I ever wanted to do. And I thought that's what I wanted to do. From my entire family, it encouraged it. And so when you talk about how now you didn't have as much fear, I had a lot of fear about making that change. Some of it because of, I thought I would be disappointing my family. It was very confusing because, and one of the things I used to say, I said, my dad, he's going to have to accept this, because what was the one thing I used to get in trouble for all the time when I was growing up? I watched too much TV. I did. Other kids was sneaking out the house, smoking weed. I was watching TV, all kinds of TV.
Running up that electric bill.
My father said, when you get old enough, you get your TV, you have a TV in the bathroom for all I care. And I did have an apartment one time where I had a TV in my bathroom. But so that's why I was like, this must be my passion, because the whole point of this story is did I identify what my passion was? Because growing up, it was, we were kids of hip hop. We were kids of the 90s. We were kids of Bill Cosby and Different World. And that life was what we kind of grew up with. And it was about going to school, getting a job, making something of yourself, not realizing that there's this whole other world out there of creativity. That was just the Dwayne way. That's right. The glasses. That's what's up. So
wow,
there's this world of creativity out there, and I didn't realize that I wasn't necessarily a right brain person all the way. So there's a big part of my left brain that needed to be activated, and I did that reluctantly at first. But man, did I fall in love with it! And at the time, it was called the cough department. I forgot even what that means.
Yeah.
But
communications and theater.
Theater, yes, communications and theater.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I mean, it was in its infancy. I mean, we were using cameras from 1960 something, the Frezzolini film cameras. We were editing actual film, which was amazing skill to be a part of and have, but it means nothing right now. But it was great to be able to look back on that and know how film was made and the history of it and learning that part of it. And it became a passion. And so it made me feel good about my decision to make that switch. And then being from New York and not in New York and New Jersey, and then moving to Los Angeles, I was always around it. So I didn't feel as alienated as maybe folks, like you're saying, to try to go into this entertainment thing when everybody's about finance and pre-med and business. Like, I didn't necessarily feel that because I came from a place where creativity was everywhere you looked. But there was a little bit more comfort there. But the big fear for me was disappointing my family. I was about 30 years old before my grandmother finally accepted that I wasn't going to medical school, because she was a nurse. I said, Grandma, I'm not going. She goes, you're not going to be a doctor? And it would break my heart. I'm like, no, Grandma, I'm out here making this TV. I'm out here making this television.
That'll be me in law school. Don't worry.
Well,
y'all want me to go to law school.
Come on, baby. Come on.
The thing about Notre Dame is that it is a middle management school. That's why their biggest program is Mendoza College of Business. People come to Notre Dame to work in middle management and on Wall Street. So if you're creative, it used to be a time that there wasn't a space for you there, and what's happened and evolved over time is even the middle management majors have decided, like, I'm creative, but what can I do with this? And they did not know a pathway to harness that creativity in a way where they can find work and get paid. And that's the main thing about the Midwest. When I was saying we went to a Midwestern school. So there is the mindset that when you go to a great university like Notre Dame, well, you go there to get a job, and you go there to get a job right away and start building that middle class life. Well, a lot of us weren't wired like that, and I think the exposure to that environment is great, because what it showed us was we're not like that, and it forced you to be separate, and it forced you to be an individual, and it forced you to think outside of the box, which are all the tools and skill sets that you need in the world of entertainment and creativity. And what I can, but here's the thing. Here's the great thing I can say about having worked with a Notre Dame graduate, because I worked at Jubba actually on a project, and I can speak to the fact that I've worked with a lot of executives now, and to me, Jubba was one of the most measured, and at the same time creatively supportive executive I've ever worked with. And I didn't appreciate it as much at the time, Jubba. So I can speak to it now because you learn from experience. That equal parts just being measured and understanding how all the moving parts work, and also being supportive of the creative, that is like, that's like the golden kind of qualities that you need to be, I believe, a great executive. So it's no accident that maybe Jubba, like some of the things that we learned at Notre Dame, prepared us for the chaos of this industry, but there's a measured approach that Jubba particularly had that I felt was like, in hindsight, and I'm like, dude, he was solid and great. And maybe, now I'm looking at, I'm a little older, Jubba, but I definitely appreciate that. And a lot of it has, and again, when I say it's Midwestern, the values that are kind of cultivated there are very different from the coast. And you can see that play out when you get out here and you work with a lot of people who may not have that kind of sensibility that's smart, knows what's going on, and respectful and creative. So having all those kinds of abilities, Jubba, like you have that, like, unlike many.
Thank you. Wow, I feel you'll make me emotional.
Yay.
I appreciate that, and Christine is right. It's I think I'm blessed because of I didn't have the balls to do what Christine is doing, which is like drop everything, become a director, drop everything, become an actor. It's a different level of, and Owen too, when he was like, I'm not an employee. Mm-hmm. I was caught between thinking that and doing it. I was too fearful of doing that. So for both of them, I think for those who may be listening, it is absolutely imperative that you do it that way. You drop it all in this artistic space, because if that is where your passion is, you're not going to be happy otherwise. So I have a little bit of what they have, what Christine and Owen have, which is this complete dedication to the art all the way. I have a little bit of that, and I have a little bit of the other, which is sort of this business side of me that is really based in fear. And I do have that regret. So I look up to both of them because the amount of courage it takes to drop everything that you were kind of ingrained, like Owen said it earlier, like, you have to, you want to, I forgot the word you said, Owen, but essentially you came here with this intent to be, to use Christine's words, this is the Midwestern university that's putting out this, you're going to be middle management, and to drop it all and to be like, because your parents spent money or they thought you were going to do that, and say, I'm going to be an actor, a director, or a comedian. That's kind of crazy when you're spending as much money as spending at Notre Dame. And I was too afraid to do it. I wish I didn't. Those are my regrets, because I wanted to be Owen and I wanted to be Christine. So I appreciate you saying that, Christine.
That was beautiful.